Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. It started out innocently enough, I guess. At least that's how I tell myself when I look back on it. A little bump in the road. A rough patch, you know? Life throws curveballs, and it's not like I didn't see it coming. Marriage isn't all rainbows and butterflies. But this, I never could have imagined it. It all began a year ago. We were sitting at the kitchen table sipping our coffee, the morning sunlight flooding through the windows. The kids were still asleep upstairs, and for the first time in weeks, I could feel the tension between us start to loosen. It had been a rough few months. Work had been overwhelming, and honestly, I was feeling burnt out. I wasn't giving her enough attention, not the way I used to. I know that much. She wanted more, needed more, and I wasn't offering it. But what Helen didn't know was that I had noticed things slipping too. She'd been distant. Her laugh wasn't the same. There was an emptiness in her eyes sometimes, like she was thinking about something I couldn't see. I tried not to question it too much. After all, we'd been married for 10 years. Relationships get complicated, right? "You need to talk to someone, Ryan," Helen said, her voice soft but firm. I took a deep breath, trying to muster a response. "What do you mean? We talk all the time, don't we?" She shook her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "No, Ryan. You don't talk to me the way you used to. You don't even really see me anymore." The words stung, but I couldn't deny there was truth in them. I'd gotten caught up in work, in life. She'd been holding down the fort, taking care of the house and the kids, and I had just let it happen, let us drift. "So what do you suggest we do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "We need to go to therapy," she said. "Couples therapy, you and me, just to reconnect, you know. I think it'll help." Therapy? It seemed like such an extreme step, but I didn't want to lose her. I agreed. Our first session was awkward. I wasn't exactly thrilled about sitting in a room with a stranger while we talked about our issues, but Helen insisted, and I could see that she wanted to make things better. That alone made me willing to try. Dr. Adam was the therapist we'd been assigned to. He was a middle-aged man, calm and collected. He looked like someone who'd been doing this for years, which, as I later learned, he had. He asked us a lot of questions about our relationship, our childhoods, our expectations. I thought I had a good grip on it, but I could see Helen was a little more emotional. Her eyes were red, and she bit her lip as she spoke. "There's just so much distance between us," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I don't feel loved anymore. Not the way I used to." I looked at her, confused and hurt. "What do you mean? I've been working hard for us. I do everything I can." "I know you work hard, Ryan," she replied, her voice soft but firm, "but you're not here. You barely spend time with me. I feel so lonely." Dr. Adam nodded sympathetically, jotting down notes. He turned to me. "Ryan, how do you feel about what Helen just said?" I could feel the weight of the question on me. "I don't know. I guess I just don't see it the same way. I feel like we're just going through a rough patch, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." We kept going to therapy. At first, it felt like things were improving. Helen seemed more engaged, more open to talking. We started to reconnect, or at least I thought we were. But then, something shifted. One evening, after another session, Helen told me something that made my stomach churn. "I think I should see Dr. Adam on my own for a while," she said, barely looking me in the eye as she stared at her phone. "I think it'll help me work through some things." I was taken aback. "What do you mean, on your own? Why?" She shrugged, her voice quieter than usual. "Just personal stuff. I think it'll be better if I work through some things alone." I didn't push it. If she thought it was necessary, I was willing to let her have space. But a small voice in the back of my head started to whisper. Something didn't feel right. Weeks passed, and Helen started spending more time with Dr. Adam. At first, it was just one session a week, but then it became 2, then 3. Every time I asked how it was going, she'd give me vague answers. "It's good," she'd say, or "I'm really making progress." But I didn't feel like I was getting the full picture. One evening, I asked her if she could tell me about her sessions, about what she was talking about with him. "I don't think it's really your place to know," she replied, her voice sharp. I tried to hide my hurt. "I'm your husband, Helen. I want to understand." Her eyes flashed with frustration. "This is my therapy, Ryan. I need to do this for myself." I nodded, even though her response didn't sit right with me. She'd always been open with me, until now. The next day at work, an idea struck me. We were in a rut, stuck in a loop of stress and distance. Helen had a counseling session that evening and mentioned she'd be home late. I realized this gave me the perfect opportunity to plan something special without her suspecting a thing. So I left work early, picking up an order of her favorite dishes from this upscale Italian place we used to love. I bought a nice bottle of wine, something expensive, not the usual stuff we kept in the house. On the way home, I even stopped to grab candles and fresh flowers, wanting to make everything perfect. Once home, I set the table like we were at a fancy restaurant. The kids were staying over at their grandparents' for the night, so we had the house to ourselves. Candles flickered on the table and the smell of the food filled the air. I had it all planned. We'd have a romantic dinner, share some wine, and then move things to the bedroom. It would be just like the old days. When Helen walked through the door, I was practically vibrating with nervous energy. She froze for a moment, taking in the scene, her face a mixture of surprise and confusion. "What's all this?" she asked, setting her bag down by the door. I stepped forward, grinning. "I thought we could have a special night. Just you and me. I figured we needed a little break from everything." Her face softened, and for a moment, I saw the Helen I fell in love with. She walked up to the table, touched the flowers, and smiled. "Ryan, this is really sweet. Thank you." Her reaction gave me hope. Maybe this would work. Maybe we'd finally reconnect. We sat down, and for a while things felt normal, almost like old times. We ate the food, sipped the wine, and talked. Helen seemed more relaxed than she had in weeks, even laughing at some of my jokes. For a brief moment, it felt like the wall between us had started to come down. After dinner, I suggested we take the wine to the living room. She agreed, carrying her glass as we moved to the couch. I dimmed the lights, the atmosphere cozy and warm, and sat next to her. We talked a bit more, and I decided to take a chance. Setting my glass on the table, I reached for her hand, intertwining my fingers with hers. Then I leaned in and started kissing her, my heart racing as I hoped to bridge the distance between us. Helen hesitated, then pulled back slightly, giving me a small, apologetic smile. "Ryan, this is really sweet. I mean it. But I'm so exhausted. I think I'm going to take a quick shower and head to bed." I tried to hide my disappointment, forcing a smile. "Are you sure? I thought maybe we could, spend some time together. Just us." "Ryan," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I appreciate all of this, really, but I'm just so tired. Can we do this another night?" Her words stung more than I wanted to admit, but I forced a smile and nodded. "Yeah, sure. Another night." She kissed me softly on the cheek before heading to the bedroom. I sat at the table for a while longer, finishing my wine alone. The soft glow of the candles and the scent of the food now felt like a cruel mockery of what I'd hoped the night would be. When I finally joined her in the bedroom, she was already in the bathroom, the sound of the shower running. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, telling myself she wasn't rejecting me. She was tired, that's all. People get tired. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize, a part of me couldn't shake the disappointment. As the water turned off, I closed my eyes, pretending to be asleep. The bathroom door creaked open, and Helen stepped out, wrapped in a towel. The light from the bathroom spilled into the room, illuminating her figure. She walked toward the closet, letting the towel drop as she reached for her pajamas. That's when I saw them. Faint bruises. One on her hip, another on her upper arm, and a third, barely visible beneath her collarbone. I sat up, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. "Helen, are you okay? What happened?" She froze for the briefest moment before quickly pulling on her pajamas. "What do you mean?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "The bruises. I just noticed them. Did you fall or something?" She turned to face me, her expression calm, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't place. "Oh, those?" she said lightly, brushing it off. "I must have bumped into something. You know how clumsy I am." She gave me a weak smile before slipping into bed. Her answer felt too convenient, too rehearsed. Helen wasn't clumsy. In all our years together, she'd rarely had so much as a scratch, let alone bruises like these. I nodded slowly, lying back down, but my mind was racing. The explanation didn't sit right with me. Helen had always been honest with me, but something about the way she'd dismissed my concern made me uneasy. As she settled into bed, turning away from me, I replayed the past few weeks in my mind. The late nights at therapy, the way she avoided intimacy, the fact that it had been more than 2 weeks since we'd last been close. and she hadn't shown any interest in starting again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words over and over in my head. Something didn't add up. I had started to feel like there was more going on with Dr. Adam than she was letting on. 2 days after that night, I took a day off work. Helen had another late session with Dr. Adam, and I was going to follow her. I had to know. If something was off, I needed to figure it out. I parked my car a few spaces down from Dr. Adam's office and waited in the shadows. A few minutes later, I saw them, Helen and Dr. Adam. They didn't look like therapist and client. They were too close, their voices too soft as they entered the building. My heart pounded as I slipped out of my car and followed them. They took the elevator to the second floor, and I quietly took the stairs, trying to stay one step behind without being noticed. When I reached the hallway, I saw them disappear into his office. The door clicked shut behind them. I stepped into the waiting area just outside Dr. Adams' office. It was eerily quiet, the faint hum of the building's ventilation system the only sound. My eyes immediately fell on the office door. The blinds on the glass window were drawn, and I couldn't see inside. But then I noticed the door was slightly ajar, just enough to give me a glimpse. I crept closer, careful not to make a sound. Through the small crack in the door, I saw them, Helen and Dr. Adam, standing close together. Too close. My stomach churned as I watched him brush a strand of hair from her face. Then he leaned in and kissed her. My hands balled into fists at my sides. Every instinct screamed for me to barge in, to confront them right there and then. But something held me back. I needed proof. If I was going to do this, I had to make sure there was no denying what I saw. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and angled it toward the door. My hands were trembling, but I kept the camera steady, focusing on what was unfolding inside. Dr. Adam kissed her again, his hands moving to her waist. She didn't stop him. Instead, she started unbuttoning his shirt, and he tugged at hers, slipping it off her shoulders. They were oblivious to everything, caught up in their betrayal. I couldn't watch anymore. My blood boiled and I shoved the door open, storming into the office. "What the hell is this?" I shouted, my voice reverberating through the office, filled with a rage I could barely contain. Helen shrieked, scrambling to grab her shirt from the floor, clutching it to her chest like a shield. Dr. Adam staggered back, his shirt half undone, his face pale, his lips trembling as though he were searching for an excuse that would never come. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, raising my phone to ensure every second of this betrayal was recorded. Helen jumped off the desk, her face drained of all color. "Ryan, it's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" I barked, my voice rising with every word. "You're in his office, half naked. What the hell am I supposed to think, Helen?" Dr. Adam stepped forward cautiously, raising his hands as though to calm me. "Ryan, let's take a moment to talk this through." "Talk this through?" I interrupted, my fury boiling over. "You're a therapist," I spat, my words dripping with disgust. "You're supposed to help people, not destroy their marriages. You're disgusting." Dr. Adam opened his mouth to reply, but before he could, I stopped the recording, pocketed my phone, and lunged at him. My fist connected with his jaw in one swift, brutal motion, sending him sprawling into the desk. Papers, pens, and a lamp crashed to the floor in a chaotic heap. Helen grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her face as she tried to pull me back. "Ryan, stop, please. This isn't going to solve anything." I yanked my arm free, turning to her with a glare that could cut through steel. "Solve anything? You're defending him? After this?" Her face crumbled and she choked on her words. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I am so sorry." Dr. Adam, still crumpled against the desk, touched his jaw gingerly, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. He glared up at me and said, "You need to leave, Ryan. Now." I let out a cold, bitter laugh. "Oh, I'm leaving. But you're going to regret this. I promise you that. I will make sure everyone knows exactly who you are." I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. "I've got everything I need right here," I spat, holding my phone up and waving it for emphasis. "Your career's over, Adam. Count on that." Helen tried to step closer to me, her voice breaking with desperation. "Ryan, please, let me explain." "Explain!" I roared, cutting her off. "You're screwing the guy who's supposed to be fixing our marriage. What the hell is there to explain?" Tears streamed down her face, her voice trembling. "Please, Ryan, I am so sorry. I love you." I shook my head, my jaw tight, the weight of her words meaningless now. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to say you love me after this." I stormed out of the office, her voice calling my name fading into the background. I didn't stop. I didn't turn back. I couldn't. The betrayal was too deep, and there was no coming back from this. The next day I called my lawyer. Filing for divorce wasn't a question anymore. It was a necessity. I wasn't going to stay in a marriage built on lies and betrayal. I wanted to make sure Helen's choices didn't just hurt me, but didn't destroy our children's lives either. As for Dr. Adam, I filed a formal complaint against him, submitting the recordings to the licensing board. It didn't take long before his license was revoked. He was no longer allowed to practice. It felt like a victory, but the real fight was just beginning. The divorce process was brutal. Helen begged for forgiveness at first, sending me texts and leaving voicemails about how much she loved me and how sorry she was. But when she realized I wasn't going to change my mind, she became defensive, trying to paint herself as the victim. Her lawyer attempted to argue that I was overreacting, that it was a momentary lapse in judgment, and didn't define her as a mother. But I had the recordings. They were my shield and my sword. The videos exposed not only the affair but the sheer audacity of their actions. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about ensuring the stability and well-being of our kids. When it came time to decide custody, I used every shred of evidence to show the court what kind of choices Helen had been making. Choices that put her own needs above her family's. Helen fought back, claiming she was overwhelmed and made a mistake, but the recordings painted a different picture. The judge saw it too. In the end, I was granted full custody of the kids. Helen tried to argue for joint custody, but her actions during the affair made it clear where her priorities had been. The kids stayed with me, and Helen was given limited visitation rights. I couldn't understand how she justified leaving them behind during this mess, but I made sure my side of the story was heard loud and clear. Looking back on it now, I'm not sure what I expected when I confronted Helen. Maybe I wanted an apology or an explanation. What I got instead was a broken woman who couldn't own up to what she had done. She blamed me. She said I'd driven her to it. But in the end, I knew the truth. She wanted me to fix myself in therapy, I said, the weight of it all hitting me. Turns out, I fixed my life by leaving her and taking the kids with me. Thank you for watching.